Hello everyone, this is Ponder on Weather. In this update, we have another huge storm complex on the way with several more rounds of severe storms as the heat really starts to expand and the monsoon comes back this weekend. Good morning everyone, how's it going out there? Thanks so much everyone that's tuned in to my 9-hour live stream yesterday to talk about all the severe weather that unfolded yesterday into the overnight hours, and that just continues on to this morning. So let's take a look at the overall satellite picture. But if you are new to the channel, go ahead and hit the subscribe button and notification bell to get all my daily updates to keep you ahead of the storm. So let's get right to it for this satellite picture this morning. And man, that was an impressive storm overnight. We just have this huge complex of storm with this dominating ridge of high pressure, and you can see it traversing just to the north of there, right along the north of that warm front. That is where all the instability comes into play. We've got this just massive ridge of high pressure pulling on all that heat and tapping into that energy and had that huge storm complex. So we've got some serious storms still on the table in portions of West Virginia going into Pennsylvania this morning, and that'll shift off into the Carolinas as we get deeper into the morning time frame this morning. But yeah, those storm complexes really packed a punch in the overnight hours. Here's the preliminary storm reports, and man, look at that, 363 wind reports already so far. We had this huge storm complex kind of blew up yesterday about 2-3 o'clock. Once the winds turned east southeast, that's when they really rapidly turned severe. And in the overnight hours, they did in fact look like it did turn into that derecho type of event over portions of Indiana going into Ohio as well as West Virginia. In fact, Fort Wayne, Indiana, I was looking at some of the video out there about 2:45 in the morning. That came in with a vengeance and even clocked it 98 mile per hour wind gust out there. So yeah, that was a really intense storm as it moved across, and we had multiple reports of a lot of hail up here in South Dakota and pretty good wind reports up here into North Dakota as well. So there was definitely some really significant storms into the overnight hour. But today, man, that heat just really starts to expand and actually lifts further off into the east, where they do have those numerous heat advisories. And look at the entire state, pretty much, of Illinois, Indiana, and almost Ohio under an excessive heat warning, guys. That is dangerous stuff. 110, 115 heat degrees, heat index. That's why they have that excessive heat warning into play. But that goes all the way down into the southeast today and all the way into the border into the Carolinas, where they do have that excessive heat warning as well, into the desert southwest. And yeah, that is heavy snow falling right now in Montana and high wind warnings. And a concern yesterday, they had a lot of heavy rain along with some of that snow melt. They had to close some of the roads in around Yellowstone, are actually completely washed out with a devastating flood up there. So that's been some serious weather, and that looks to continue for several more days to come. In fact, we've got numerous power outages that we're dealing with this morning. 372 customers without power in the state of Ohio. We've got a 78,000 in West Virginia, 66,000 in Indiana, 45,000 in Illinois, Michigan about 35,000, compounding with the intense heat that comes on. So we're just hoping that they are able to restore some of this power before really the intense heat really starts to crank into the afternoon. So that is not a good combination with all those power outages even out right now from all the storms, and then you have all the heat going to be impacting a lot of those same areas that are under that excessive heat warnings right now, with some dangerous 110, 115 degrees heat index out there up into the Ohio Valley. But today we've got yet another series of storm complexes that are going to be moving through. So we have this storm complex over portions of DC this morning, back into Virginia Beach, into Richmond, all the way down here into Wilmington and to Raleigh. Those could be on the slight risk severe side, as those that same mesoscale convective system storm complex is going to be impacting those areas into the morning hours. But in the middle, there's where they have more of that, what they call the dry slot, where they've got that just dominating ridge of high pressure, sucking in all that moisture. Heat index is that 110, 115. And then you have like a mini little cool front here just to the northwest of there. So you get that compressional heating on the south side. But just to the north of there, you got that boundary where all that instability is going to be unfolding again into portions of Omaha, into Des Moines, back into Rochester, into Sioux City. So those storms could also be packing the punch into the afternoon, late evening time frame. But yeah, we have another series of complexes up here in Grand Forks and Fargo where they've just been getting inundated almost day after day after day of series of rounds of storms. But going into tomorrow, things look even more intense than they do today, because yet we have another developing storm complex taking advantage of all that heat and all that instability in the atmosphere. Cape values are at almost extreme levels again. And then up here into Rochester, back into Des Moines again, all the way into Madison, and all the way up into Marquette. Those storms could really start to turn severe into the late afternoon, evening time frame, and those could actually turn into a massive squall line as well. And there are some signs that those could be starting to elongating and form into a damaging wind threat, straight line wind threat, and even a possible another derecho maybe come out of that type system as that will dive southeastward, heading into portions of the mid-Atlantic states as we get into the overnight hours on Wednesday. So man, let's look at today. So here's the current radar this morning, where we do have those storms over that move through Pittsburgh, going over Pennsylvania this morning, back into West Virginia. That goes into portions of DC this morning. That extends all the way into portions of Virginia. We do have a little bit more instability again back over the Dakotas, and we've got all that snow still flying up here into Montana with some pretty high amounts just definitely accumulating with all that cooler air dragging in from the north. And then as we go into, say, Wednesday morning, we're going to have another yet pretty good complex that I think is going to actually come to fruition and setting up shop over portions of Minnesota, extending all the way into portions of Nebraska. That will start to get its act together into the afternoon time frame, and by 3 or 4 o'clock we could be looking at a pretty serious squall line starting to form and really start to take shape and back building on the south side and really start to elongate. So we could be looking at some serious intense winds taking shape over portions of central Wisconsin here, heading into Iowa and the northern portions of Missouri, extending all the way south into Kansas, and that will dive southeastward, during the late afternoon, evening time frame, where we do have more instability down here in portions of Florida, back into the Carolinas. But overall, the next 48 hours, here's where the wind reports could be. Yeah, this is maxing out about 90 miles an hour. So just to give you an idea, yesterday this was hinting at 99 miles an hour before the event took place. And yet we had confirmation of a 98 mile per hour wind report in Fort Wayne, Indiana. So yes, we could be looking at up to 90 miles an hour again, probably with that second round on Wednesday from that squall line that's going to be coming through portions of Kansas and Iowa and to Wisconsin, getting into Illinois. So somewhere here are probably going to be getting some 70, 80, upwards to 90 mile per hour wind gust again with that nasty squall line that's expected to move through over the next 36, 48 hours. But beyond that squall line, that intense storms and all the instability, I showed you the ridge of high pressure kind of shifting a little bit further east. That puts the instability a little bit further east. So now those storms will be taking place a little bit further northeast, right? So back into Thursday, we're going to be looking at a slight risk for severe storms into portions of Cincinnati, heading all the way up into Pittsburgh again, back into Cleveland, all the way up into Buffalo, into Rochester, into Watertown areas. And this area also could be looking to expand as well as we get closer to the event. So this could be another fairly significant day on the table for your Thursday coming up. But beyond that, I think things start to clear out. Friday, I mean, we've got a pretty nice, high pressure. High pressure, sinking air, a lot of substances is almost impossible. So, Friday's more the reset day. So, I mean, gosh, we need a break, right? I mean, we're going to be looking at an intense week. We started the week off with a pretty intense stuff yesterday, and we're going to have more rounds and rounds and rounds kind of all week long. So, by the time we get into Friday, we need a break, right? But we're going to be looking further down to the south because we do have a little bit of instability down here in the Caribbean with this activity. But we also have another instability access into portions of the Pacific where they do have our second named storm of the season. And by then, we could be looking at a hurricane on the table heading out into the open waters of the Pacific and really kind of fizzling out by then. But yeah, by the time we get into let me take a look at the overall tropics because we do have that instability down here into the Caribbean. The National Hurricane Center does have actually a 40% chance of this trying to develop in a tropical storm entity, but this is also moving northwest actually towards land. So we're, development or not, it's going to be packing a lot of heavy rainfall for the portions of Nicaragua here as this continues to shift northwestward trajectory heading towards the Yucatan Peninsula, Cancun, over there, and essentially all those areas up here along the Yucatan Peninsula needs to be on alert from this system with all the heavy rainfall that's going to be heading your way. And most of the ensemble members guidance actually has this continue to shift further off into the west and northwest. So if it does actually go into and kind of cross over the Yucatan and enter the southern portions of the Gulf of Mexico, and even if it does actually try to come into a tropical storm entity and become Bonnie, and then it's basically probably going to be hitting southern portions of Mexico and really not even bring much of rainfall of all to the state of Texas. Most of the instability is going to be crossing over into the Pacific, where that in combination with the weakening ridge over the desert southwest could start the fruition of the monsoon season, which I think is going to be starting to unfold by the time we get into Father's Day weekend. So yes, we do have those series of complexes going to be coming across. We've got a kind of a little bit of a lull in the action for a good chunk of the U.S., so we'll take a reprieve for Father's Day weekend for, I think, much of the severe storms, as we'll look at the monsoon storms trying to come back into play over the desert southwest and bringing much needed rainfall for that region into portions of Arizona, New Mexico, into Utah, getting into portions of Colorado. So I do feel some fairly good rains, considering what you've seen in the last 4 or 5 months, which is basically nothing. So this is just the start, I think, of a monsoon season that will, I think, pick up in intensity as we get deeper into the season. So, but yes, as we get into that Sunday time frame, there's the low pressure system. I think it does actually come to a hurricane, but then fizzle out in the much cooler waters out into the open Pacific because we are under that La Nina. But more importantly, we've got all that rain going to be impacting the Yucatan Peninsula. We could have that instability in the very far southern regions of the Bay of Campeche heading into the portions of Mexico, but bringing those much needed rains into the desert southwest up into the Four Corners regions, where we still have just kind of days and days of impacts of much cooler weather for the Pacific Northwest and really along the coast without that, those cooler conditions with those cooler rains. But on your Father's Day weekend, for Father's Day, I mean, that heat just kind of extends. So the cool places in town by then, after the heat intensifies, goes up to portions of the Northeast and kind of comes back as that ridge of high pressure comes back over the central part of the U.S. By Father's Day, we're looking at some pretty nice conditions up here to the Northeast. I mean, widespread, 70s up here. So that's going to be really good, nice conditions going to be dealing with for your Father's Day. And again, much of the Pacific Northwest, really the dominating ridge of high pressure can be lifting all the way up into Canada. Yes, I said Canada. You've been getting some much cooler conditions. I think that ridge of high pressure will be really starting to pick up and expand and really shift further north. We've got hundreds showing up into portions of the Dakotas by then. And I think that ridge of high pressure just continues to lift. So by Monday, that dominating ridge could be over portions of Canada by then. So those warmer conditions, if you have been cooler conditions and you've been waiting for it to warm up in Canada, I think the ridge is going to be on the way for you. It's just several days away. By the time we get into next week, those much warmer conditions will be coming back. But at the same time, we have another trough that's going to be digging down from the Pacific Northwest, just adding some of that instability by then, and we could be looking at more severe storms, but lifting that jet stream even further north by then. So we could be looking at severe storms maybe possibly into Canada by then as we get into next week time frame. Because the ridge of high pressure, just not only does it come back, but it's going to be expanding as we go into next week. And it really could be expanding, getting into portions of the southeast where we're talking widespread triple-digit temperatures are going to be on the table by the middle of next week for sure. And much of Texas, much of the southeast, and much of the desert southwest. So we've got another pretty intense heat wave for a good chunk of the southern plains and the southeast as well, while the jet stream lifts well to the north and actually may even lift further north into Canada and have that instability access even further into Canada as well. So we could be talking the combination of that heat coming in before then, and then all that instability coming on the backside. We could be looking at severe storms and that jet stream lifting even further north than what it is now, and heading up into Canada with some of that severe weather coming back for them. But overall, I mean, look, after Father's Day, you can definitely see where that ridge of high pressure is going to be dominating for a good chunk of the central part of the U.S., all the way up in the Canadian border. The cooler games in town are going to be the Northeast and the Northwest, right? In the middle part of the country, well above average temperatures. You have near normal conditions, which is still hot for the desert Southwest, but you've got those much needed rains coming back for you. So this is much needed welcome rains are going to be coming back on the table for a good chunk of the desert Southwest heading into your Father's Day weekend into next week as well. So, hey, I appreciate you guys watching. Do like this video. Definitely leave your comments below. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel. Catch the latest update where I protect you before and after the storm.